Hey, everybody, welcome, and let's get right to it. And without any waste of time, about 3 days ago, I had a conversation with a friend of mine in Las Vegas who has been more than head deep involved in various kinds of large scale development in Las Vegas from that person's perspective for, I would say going back to 2009. And because in normal process, if you will, Dave Kaval would meet with my friend. My friend, in exasperation, basically said, he just sort of blurted it out there that Kaval's meeting with the LVCVA, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. That's Stephen Hill. Okay. And I know that Dave had met Steve last year when Dave went initially to Las Vegas and he went on that boring project tour, that tunnel. And that actually was where he had met Stephen Hill. But that was, a meeting during a tour. Hey, we'll talk to you later. This is what we're doing, but we're right now, great to meet you, sort of thing. Then, of course, just about 2 months after that, it was announced that Dave Kaval met with Phil Ruffin, who is the owner of the Treasure Island, among other iconic hotel properties, some of which have been torn down of late, and is co-owner of the Trump International Hotel with former President Donald Trump. So then, fast forward to this year, 2022, we were in 2021, right? Now we're 2022. And we have, if you think about it, first of all, a year ago, Dave Kaval said he was going to release stadium drawings. He said that on my show, okay, for Las Vegas. Then Ben Garcia, my friend whose illustration marks this broadcast, released his idea for a ballpark for Las Vegas, which was quickly mistaken for something that was actually really going to happen. But there were a number of processes that were set in motion to make the possible use of his design closer to reality than not. And that's all I'll say about that. So while that's going on, of course, we have the lawsuit that was filed by East Oakland Stadium Alliance. And in that outcome was mischaracterized by the Chronicle in its headline, "The A's Won." I think if you paid enough attention to this, both online and off, you know that if this were a clear victory like DCDC, you would have heard about it through Dave Kaval through a tweet. Instead, nothing. Nothing. When Dave Kaval's Twitter account goes silent, you know, or you should know by now, that he's doing work someplace else. So I'm helping to fill in the blank. Let's get back to the lawsuit for a second, because it's important for you to realize that Judge Brad Seligman came up with the same essential decision, except he added a little bit more work with respect to the EIR. The bottom line is it's not completely perfect. And so the settlement conference on the 20th will give us a better picture by far of what's going to happen in concrete. But what could happen is the agreement is, hey, fix the EIR. What does that mean? It means you have to spend more money on it. And I'm asserting that the A's are tapped out in spending. The attendance, has not gone well. We're headed for a recession. money flows have slowed down dramatically. In fact, let's take the Vegas parlance, for example. Casinos did better last year because there was more government money flowing into the pockets of you and me through, for example, the emergency economic disaster loan program or the PPP loan program. And then the government put out these extra loans, and now they're basically asking people to pay them back in the middle of a pandemic, which is still throwing a choke chain around the world's economy, which is, stuck on stupid. Okay. I don't care what party it is right now. We've got a massive problem with the stupids. We really do. And that should concern you more than anything else. That we have people in charge at various levels of government who do not know how to pull the levers of government to make your life better and mine. All right, put that over here. Let's come back to the athletics and the lawsuit. While that's happening, again, Kaval's not taking a victory lap. He's barely paying attention to it. Why? Think about what happened almost in parallel process with the lawsuit concerns. Phil Ruffin, not once, but twice in the space of a month, met with the athletics. The first report we had, roughly now a month and a half ago or thereabouts, was that the A's were meeting with Phil Ruffin in Las Vegas. Then roughly 2 weeks later, Ruffin was said to be headed to Oakland. All right. And what's so sloppy about how media is done today is you don't have anyone putting these together. They are reporting on these as separate events and not telling the story as it unfolds, which is the greatest example of how much we've fallen down as media, which should be handled by, simply. Well, but, I'm not going to go off on that because I try to put it together for you. So come to me or ask me. That's why you're here. Great. And so that's put together where, and I'm going to get all these comments too, believe it or not, but that's put together where clearly they have a reason for meeting in such a rapid fashion, considering the length of the project, right? Both Howard Terminal and Las Vegas, within a month. Phil Ruffin doesn't just meet with anyone. He has a reason for this. And consider that Phil Ruffin 2 years ago said he would not invest in a sports organization. He said that. So now he is giving the appearance that in some kind of way he is going to do that. Now, consider the information that I told you regarding my friend told me. And let's put this together. Why would Dave Kaval, and I've asked, I haven't received, let me complete my sentence. I have not received anything other than an intent by the athletics to have Dave meet with me for an interview in a cyber fashion at some point in the near future. I would prefer that to be today. I would have preferred that to be last week. But hey, look, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometime, you get what you need, right? Now, the question is, why would he meet with Stephen Hill? And my friend was saying normally he would meet with me. What does this all mean? It means that Kaval is searching for a bond issue deal, and what I believe is being engineered. Now, no, it doesn't mean it'll come to pass. But this is what I assert is being engineered because there's no other reason to meet with Steve. No other. Given where we are right now, okay? No other. What I believe is being engineered is very simply this. A bond issue for the project that would be let. Let means released, created and released and paid for by the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, which will call for what? An additional hotel tax. I mean, if we consider that the current hotel tax rate is 88/100, this is 1%, and it hasn't impacted hotel stays at all. There have been bigger reasons for this hotel visitation rates to go down and go up, far bigger. And one can argue that the Raiders' success has made the stadium hotel tax something that's more than paid for itself. Point is, there may be a school of thought that they can add a percent to that hotel tax, or less than. It depends. If they're going to go with a bond issue and they're going to cap it at, say, $250 million, which has been the talk, then you don't need a full percentage increase in the stadium hotel tax take. For me, I think it would be a good idea to have, just because you don't want, the way this economy is going, you don't want to not be flush with some cash that you can have in your debt coverage fund. Okay. So I know I'm getting a little bit into the weeds, but my point is, this matters now because, again, why would Dave Kaval be meeting with Stephen Hill? And I know for a fact this has happened, because the person that I talked to is a big kahuna. So that's in motion. Where it sits, I don't know. But I do know this. The Athletics are engineering a ballpark deal. Engineering a ballpark deal. And so consider other signs toward this. Let's go with what we know. Was Dave Kaval with Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf when Peter Buttigieg came in to visit? No. Did he put a picture of a celebration regarding this event? No. Do you want another sign? Was anyone else with the Athletics present and accounted for at a meaningful level? No. There was no victory lap on social media done by the Athletics to celebrate the arrival of Peter Buttigieg for a conversation that purportedly had to do with Howard Terminal Ballpark, as opposed to Howard Terminal, the project separate from the ballpark. It's easy to confuse the two because, hey, look, the mayor is not in the business of announcing that the Athletics left Oakland or are leaving Oakland. It doesn't serve her well. And what I believe is happening in that area is the Athletics have spent, as Kaval's told me and you, millions of dollars paying for City of Oakland staff. So here we are in a situation where, because of the attack on the EIR and the future of having to pay more dollars out to correct the EIR, let alone the other consulting work that needs to be done, for example, to establish the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. Now, my contention is that if your staff knows what they're doing, they don't need consultants. And I know you don't like saying this, but I don't care. I'll say it again. If I were in charge, I know how to do this. I would get a bunch of interns to do the grunt work part of it and the paperwork, rather than hire some consultant, just because. The kind of work that the consultants do is, in the past, the kind of work that cities were expected to know how to do in-house. All right? But the mayor has lost a lot of time by not hiring a project manager who knows how to get a project done in a tax increment financing environment. Instead, what they sought was a friend of Betsy Lake's, that's who Molly Mayburn is, who is well respected in real estate circles in the Bay Area, but private sector, not public private, and then yet also known for being involved in the Times Square redevelopment in New York. Now that is public private, okay, but it didn't involve the kind of tax increment financing concerns and unique environment that is presented. To wit, when you establish a tax increment financing district or sign into law legislation that allows you to do so, your first call should be to the taxing agents, including the County of Alameda, to say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. Then you meet with them. And if they don't cooperate with what you want to do, they threaten to hold up what you want to do, mathematically excise them out of the picture and say, look, your 17% tax increment revenue will get another way. How you do that is simple. You take more of the base year assessed value for the project, which should include the ballpark, which is privately financed, and other businesses. Calculate that amount and say, look, we need $2 billion. But then you figure you're not going to get 17% because the county is out of it. Guess what? You increase that size by $2 billion more. Excuse me, by 17% more. All right. And then you say you negotiate to keep what would normally be that base year take and say, we want to use this. Because if you say to each taxing agency, hey, look, we'll make a deal with you where if you let us have the total of which would be 20 million, we will help you finance a project where you want. Okay, that's how you do that. The legislation does not say you cannot make that kind of deal. And if you have any concern that you can, what you do is you walk back to the legislature with special legislation, just like you would do for EIR, allowing you to do that. That's how you get that done. All right. This is what happens when you have the will to get a project done. The reason why the city is so slow is because the city does not have the collective will to get something done, or even a powerful enough will among a group of people in the right place to get it done. But I digress. Now, let me take your comments, because like I've laid out where we're at right now, and we'll go from there. I'll go back and I'll start from the beginning here and read your comments. And says, okay, that's StreamYard. Hello. 5 minutes, 11 minutes. Okay. Yeah, it says, they're not hearing anything about bringing the NFL back to Oakland. I answered with the NFL's coming back to Oakland. How's that? That group who owns half the Coliseum site, their goal is to bring the NFL back. And apparently there's a lot of support. It's not happening. The NFL is touching Oakland with a 10-foot pole. That'll change. Yeah, it says, I'm not against. Okay, that's fine. It says, but if the A's, Oakland's last professional relocates, what is that a similar to the NFL? I think that's a great question. Right now, yeah, Oakland is a bad look, no question about it. My assertion is that because of the location of the city in the Bay Area, and because of the economic power of the Bay Area, that status is temporal. Once we get past this administration and quite possibly the next, because I believe that the way things are going, unless we have somebody like De La Fuente who knows what to do and hires doers, all right, you're going to get somebody in office that may very well find themselves recalled. The situation in Oakland is that bad. So we need to get through this and get out of the crap to get back to where Oakland rightfully should be at. We will get there because of the location of the city in the middle, right smack in the middle of one of the most powerful economic regions in the world, even with all this. That's why I say that, okay? It shows Oakland's a city that can't get things done. Right now, it can't. I said I was coming. I'm here. Fine. Okay. So Zinni, it's over. Noise Park, then it's over. As far as I'm concerned, the Howard Terminal Ballpark part is. Howard Terminal isn't because it still can be done. But here's the problem even then. And what a lot of people don't understand. And I'm going to say something to you too. I'm happy to be wrong because this is fluid. All right. We're in the middle of a bad economy. Maybe the private financing the A's want doesn't come to pass in Las Vegas. There are a number of actions that could occur to make Las Vegas not a reality. I happen to believe that none of those actions are going to happen. And I think it's just a matter of time and process. And that's why I'm more interested in what took place when to make this the reality that it will become and what's happening. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. A lot of you want, the baseball score, the football score. Just give me the score at the end, Zenny. I'm more interested in explaining to you what formations were used, why a play was called, and what the outcome was, and how it could not have worked. I'm interested in the detailed process. And in economic development parlance, I'm more interested in explaining to you because my assertion is a lot of people don't understand how government works or have any interest in it to find out who is doing what. Some of the most effective and interesting people in American culture have headed up some of the most consequential economic development projects of our time. Look at Robert Moses in New York. Look at Dan Doktorov and the plan for the the Olympics that never came to pass, but set the ground for transformation in New York sports scene with respect to facilities. All right. That was, again, Dan Doktorov. Look at what Casey Wasserman is doing in LA. All right. Everywhere you look, there are personalities that ignite government and the private sector to get these projects done. And those are the people, and that's the work you should be interested in. Not the end game, but who is doing it, what's going on, and why. It's more fun than you realize. Especially if you're young, you're interested in development, this is what you should be thinking about, okay? What bothers me is you don't have people covering this who have any interest at all like that. If they did, they'll be talking to me because I'm the only person in history, in history, to try to bring the Super Bowl to Oakland, and I went through my own process. So I've been there, done that, got my T-shirt in terms of the work, didn't get it because of the outcome. But that outcome changed my life. So, and no one can take away from me that fact. So be interested in the process. Be interested in how the sausage is made. That's what we're talking about here. All right. Gary Hall says, the A's knew before the season this would be a serious possibility. That's why they gutted the roster and are basically ignoring the team's performance on the field. I agree. But also, I think that on top of that, there is the practical problem of the incredible weakness in the economy that's really hurt the Athletics. Canberra says, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, it is. Well, at least the A's are staying on the West Coast. He says, thanks for the response. Look, I hope Oakland changes in the future. It will. It's a matter of time. It will. But I hate to say the process that Oakland is going through now with people losing their lives in ways that are senseless and being economically harmed. Every time you turn around, you can't even park your car without having been broken into or its windows smashed. That's something you've got to pay for. And what if you don't have the money to pay for them? What if your insurance ran out because you lost your job? Awful stuff. Noah Lawn says, in regard to the will to collectively come together to keep the team, the problem is the city reps need not have will, but understand they now present a community who does have the will. I'm going to take you on that one because my point is this Oakland's community has less will than in the past. Let me give you an example. Keep that up there. the Raiders returned from LA to Los Angeles. There was such a will to get the Raiders back that the city council overlooked as much as they allowed Ezra Rapport, who was the assistant city manager who structured the Raiders deal, to do a deal where they didn't see a market study to really ask the question, is there a base of people that will actually pay for the PSLs in a timely fashion to make this bond issue work? The answer was no. What you had was a lot of people laying down their credit cards, putting more on their credit cards than the credit cards could handle. And so when it came to running those cards, what happened was, and so what happened with the deal was, who wound up paying for it because of the way it was written was the city and the county. Now, the problem that we faced since then is because that's the one big sports project we did that fell apart. No one pays attention to the fact that the Warriors deal paid for itself. Even with the Warriors trying to get away with murder against the Athletics, against the City of Oakland and losing in court, even with all that, the success of the deal that was approved by Mayor Harris was that those bond issues were paid for the Warriors arena renovation. And all that's forgotten because you have now media people who weren't even old enough to know what was going on then, but are active now saying, oh, well, the Coliseum has never been rehabilitated since it was built in 66. That's a lie. It was rehabilitated for the Raiders, and the Warriors Stadium is brand new. The only part of it that remains that is a representative of the old, aside from the location itself, is that crosshatch design. But even the material that made it up was rebuilt, restructured, improved. Okay? But what happened was that stadiums today have, from a sports business standpoint, a 25-year effective life, and then the teams that occupy them go hunting for renovation or a new home. That's the reality, a child of technological change. Okay? So what's going on in that reality now is that you have a community that's less united. It's hard in Oakland to find two people who agree on how a ham sandwich should be made, let alone consumed. Oakland is more divided than ever, racially, ideologically, and generationally. And there's no, you would say, what's the main culprit? Digital technology. Consider that you have older people who are used to reading newspapers, right? Note that. Whereas you have younger people who don't read newspapers, they get this off here and what someone texts to them. It's periodic. It's not episodic where you're looking for a newspaper to be at your doorstep in the morning so you can get the news. No, it's 24 hours. Sometimes it comes to you at 3 in the morning. Sometimes it comes to you at 3 in the afternoon. Buy this. But people who are older are not used to this. They're not used to communicating by Facebook. A lot of people, I'm one of them, prefer a phone call. I'm straddle generations. I'm 60 years old, but I'm mistaken for 30. The profession that I chose to be in is a profession that is commonly governed by people who are considerably younger than I am. I'm talking about digital media. I was at the Twitter launch party. I was Oakland's first vlogger. All that, okay? All of that example I'm giving you points to the divisions in Oakland that we have on so many different levels. It takes a unique person to recognize those from a political standpoint and bring people together. And I haven't seen among the people in the council now the person that can do that in the middle of a mess that Oakland is in. That's why someone, I think, online remarked, why am I mean? I'm not mean. The city is messed up. Someone's got to get mad about it. But there are too many people who are willing, in part because of their younger age, to just sort of deal with what they see. It's awful. I have never seen Oakland in such a mess. Don't get used to it, folks. It's not supposed to be the norm. So there you go. As far as will, that's why I say this community doesn't have that will. It doesn't understand how to pull together en masse, regardless of race, creed, and okay, so we're back. Let me explain what happened there. I had a lot of windows open, two browsers, a million things going on at once, literally, and the RAM load. And it wasn't like I was being warned, but I was too into answering your questions to really realize that I should have, shut it down prematurely and then come back. At any rate, we're back. Okay, so let me continue. I left with Noon's explanation. Okay, or my explanation regarding the comment here that in regards to the will to collectively come together to keep the team. The problem is the city reps need not have the will, but to understand they represent a community does have the will. And my point is the community does not have the will. Okay. Okay. So moving forward, all right. And so let me go back to Or no. Yeah, okay. Harley Pinson says neo-Marxist control of Oakland. Of course, there'll be no deals with the A's. I'm going to take that for a second. There is a call for socialists to get involved, but the socialists can't even agree. And again, this gets to the splintering I was talking about. I'm not going to go on and belabor about this. I'm just going to say this in a second. The socialists can't even agree with each other in Oakland. You have the Democratic socialists over here. John Reman, who's running for mayor, who says he's the Oakland socialist, who should have their backing but doesn't, right? That in of itself tells you that they can't even unite, all right? So it's not so much that they won't even have a deal, but there's no one can seem to want to agree with each other, regardless of where camp they are in. I don't care if you're capitalist, socialist, or whatever, to do anything in Oakland. So deals get done by a handful, but they benefit private interests for real estate purposes, for housing, and yet so we still get market rate housing. We don't get extremely affordable housing to clean up this mess. We don't get the use of enhanced infrastructure financing district legislation because let's face it, all we've done is talk about it. We have not implemented it, whereas cities around us in California have used it to effectively provide a larger stock of affordable and extremely affordable housing. That fact alone should be embarrassing to Oakland, but the Oakland of today doesn't seem to care. That will change. Represents the community and the benefits of the community. Got it. Yeah, says Zinni, my humble opinion, Sacramento is probably the market pro sports looks at if they want to add more teams in Northern California. Okay. So explain why Sacramento doesn't have an NFL team. Just saying. Harry says, I agree the A's should look at Sacramento. They did before. And look, it hasn't happened. When I worked for Elihu in 1996, I remember talking to Ken Schott about his concerns and about the utility payment that they owed us, that they then sent over Andy Dolich to negotiate on their behalf against us, represented by me and the mayor, which we came to an agreement. But hey, the A's are trying to basically then use that to say, hey, look, we can't be at the Coliseum. We're going to leave over and go to Sacramento as if a Sacramento Stadium Authority will allow them not pay their electric bill. Just saying. Okay, just saying. Just saying. All right. It would have happened some time ago. I'm not saying it can't, but San Francisco does not have, in and of itself, the appropriately sized base to effectively host an NFL football team. All right. It is not at that level. And considering its proximity to the Bay Area, why would anyone try to establish a pro football team in Sacramento, considering its airport size and everything else? This is an economic development issue, as opposed to the Bay Area, which is just a stone's throw away. You have Oakland open. You're going to tell me that Oakland is less desirable from a purely demographic and location perspective and economic power perspective than Sacramento? I mean, come on. That's getting carried away. I agree that Oakland is screwed up politically, but I am explaining to you that this is a temporary situation, and that the location of Oakland in the Bay Area in and of itself will cause that turnaround. It's only a matter of time. Harley Prince always said that Sacramento as Portland was a better fit for the A's if they relocated. I'm going to move on from that. Eric Sterling says, Zinni, is it true that if Oakland deal is dead? It's, as far as I'm concerned, it is. And all of this is just sort of flailing away. I mean, let's just take where we're at. Okay. First of all, it doesn't mean the A's are going to give up, because the A's are about saving political face and avoiding a lawsuit and carrying they don't want to be in a situation where it looked like they cut their fans off in Oakland, as opposed to allowing this to play out and using the very screwed up nature of this to say to fans, hey, you're not getting treated right in Oakland and this isn't going well for you. So you might as well be over there. All right. That's why this parallel path situation exists and has been allowed to exist. It's smart from the perspective of development politics and economics. It's a smart play. The one wild card is the recession. All right. But the problem that the Athletics face right now is that the mayor is just months from being termed out. That is no small point of concern. Why? Because the talks and negotiations have been made with the mayor. When I asked Mayor Schaaf who would take up the mantle for Howard Terminal Ballpark, not Howard Terminal project separate from the ballpark, but Howard Terminal Ballpark, the mayor specifically told me maybe Ed Reskin. In other words, Libby couldn't even put certainty on who takes the reins regarding Howard Terminal. What happens to the current project manager? My guess is that Molly Mayburn remains, because Howard Terminal project is really bigger than the ballpark. The problem, though, and where they make a serious error in judgment, once again, is, and proves that they don't understand tax increment financing, is you're letting go on the opportunity to build a giant privately financed facility. Which would that be? The public part of it comes around it, okay? But the fact of the matter is that the A's intend to pay for and own their own stadium in Oakland. That means they're a property tax payer. Now, if they don't want to pay the property tax, what you do is you kindly remind them, as I have on many occasions, if you don't pay that property tax, you basically kill the engine of tax increment financing. Why? Because, folks, you're dumping a $2 billion facility onto a tax increment revenue district. That is a giant whale going splash and splashing money literally all over Oakland because of the way SB 293 Skinner is written, which the other media never pays attention to. I heard someone once, I'm not going to say his name, talked about Howard Terminal without mentioning TIF or Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. I turned off the video. I turned off the video. All right. That is the lifeblood of this project. And efforts to not make it are comical. And I say that in talks, comical. All right. So you need a project of that size, $2 billion, to make that giant revenue splash, which then can legislatively spill over into where it's needed. East Oakland for affordable and extra affordable housing, for business assistance to help businesses recover from the pandemic, as per AB 464 Mullen, signed into law last year by California Governor Gavin Newsom. What does that do? It allows even existing tax increment revenue to be steered to assist businesses like yours, particularly bricks and mortar organizations that have been hampered by the pandemic. And it's written that way, which means hampered by the pandemic can take on a number of meanings. It could be getting robbed in an inordinate number of times, like the Ma families experienced with their coffee shop at 1820 Park Boulevard, down next to the marijuana dispensary, which used to be the Parkway Theater, which I love. And you can see the documentary on what happened to right here at Zenny 62 on YouTube. Okay. So where we are with this is at a juncture where the mayor has not left a team in place to assure the Howard Terminal Ballpark survives beyond her administration. And that's happening right in your face. And it's happening in the face of some of the media people you listen to who then go back and soft pedal their relationships and do not ask the tough questions. They just act as a mouthpiece for what those officials want to say. And by that, carry on this mutually done incompetence and allow it to grow to gargantuan proportions. I'm being blunt. Someone has to, given the mess that this is. Yes, the problem with Oakland is that there are a lot of people who are just fine being a suburb of San Francisco with no identity. I'm glad you said that, Yaz, or wrote that rather, because there was a time, I hate to say it like that, but it's true. The late Warren Chip Brown, proud Cal alum, publisher of the Montclarian, that gave me my first column job. I didn't seek being a journalist. My background's always been economic development urban planning from Cal and Texas Arlington before that. I went to Skyline High. Go Skyline. Oakland. Go Tom Hanks. Go John Landgraf. Momentary aside, you watch FX. Chairman for years and president before that, John Landgraf, Skyline High, class of 80 with me. Go John. Anyway, I had to put that in there. The problem is that we all have believed that Oakland should be the number one city in the Bay Area and not a suburb of San Francisco. You had people who came in here starting in the late 90s and started calling it Brooklyn, and that's when the war started. Oakland is not Brooklyn. Yeah, we have a district called Brooklyn, but Oakland is not Brooklyn. We are not a borough of San Francisco. We stand alone. But you have a number of people now, particularly who moved over from San Francisco to Oakland. Like I saw Andrew Freeman, a friend of mine who's a marketer. He's a marketing guy in San Francisco. He's at Oakland Pride. I'm like, what the heck are you doing here, man? Okay. That's when I knew San Francisco had poured into Oakland, which is great from a standpoint of money investment, which is why we have all of these market rate homes and apartments and condos. But look what it's produced. Look at the homeless population that it has caused to come into existence because Jerry Brown got rid of redevelopment, which would have, if it were maintained, allow us to have our giant affordable housing annual budget, which is at $111 million in 2011, last year of it. Then Jerry killed it, and what happened? He killed it right at the time when this tech-based Bay Area economy was growing and the money going to many different young hands was growing exponentially, it seemed. And then people were getting pushed out of their apartments. Elderly Black women were the targets in Oakland and the East Bay. Elderly Black women. Okay? Horrible. Horrible. And so what we have now is and that's why, look, I would have backed Lauren Taylor. I would have backed Lauren Taylor for mayor if he did not give off the appearance that he wants to make Oakland East San Francisco. You hear what I'm talking about? Lauren has no problem going over to San Francisco, touting San Francisco businesses. He's a District 6 council member, not running for re-election in there, okay? What has he done for District 6? I don't know, all right? He got money to a handful of businesses there, but it was $8 million when they needed several hundred of millions in assistance because of the pandemic. You have $8 million for a handful of businesses? Literally a handful? Come on, and you call that a victory? Not a victory. Okay? Not a victory because the times are so bad. So then he takes his family to the Cheesecake Factory in San Francisco. And he's the Oakland council member, puts all this on Instagram. I'm thinking, dude, what are you doing? In our history, elected officials in Oakland are not supposed to do that. You're supposed to take your family to Oakland businesses in your district, not act like you're in Oakland, but doing the vacation thing like you don't live in Oakland or you're visiting from New York. And so you go to, the Cheesecake Factory in Union Square. I mean, come on. I mean, yeah, I can do that. But as a person taking the taxpayers' money and supposedly representing the Oakland taxpayer, you can't do that. Yet he does it, and no one other than me calls him out on it. When I call him out on it, he defends it. When I call him out on Oakland needing its own NBA team, he said he didn't want to go that route. So if he winds up mayor, we'll get stuck, and Shangtown won't be any better. These are your current council members, and Treva Reed's running for mayor. She hasn't even done anything. She just got elected to be in District 7. She's already taking their taxpayer money and running for mayor. And that's okay. Seriously? These are unusual times. I like these people personally, but professionally, no. Oakland is in super bad shape. You hear me? Super bad shape. So you cannot rubber stamp the behavior of council members or the mayor in this environment, and you must demand better. That's a fact. It is shameful what people are allowing to go on. All right. So there you go, Eric. There's that's that one. The next one is let's see here. Need to go back to where he was so I can get to the next one. Excuse me for a second. I'm going upstairs. There it is. He agrees. Zinni, I agree. Just look at the people who are running for mayor. I think I touched on that one. No, it says, well said, Zinni. This is a little earlier. He says, I have optimism that the A's were more uniquely Oakland than the Raiders and Warriors. Hope is we all have as A's fans. They're all uniquely Oakland. But the problem, as a person who worked in Oakland, I'll tell you what the problem is. And again, it goes back to San Francisco, but from an entirely different perspective. If there were no San Francisco, Oakland would be better off because Oakland would be the true center. But psychologically, Oakland is content to take a back seat to San Francisco. Why? Well, look, the main reason is because just as our post-war economy was growing throughout the United States and the world, Oakland was becoming a black city. We came to Oakland in the 40s seeking work and found it in the shipbuilding industry and the steel industry and the healthcare industry. That's what caused Oakland's dramatic growth in its black population to the point where by the 1960s and 70s, Oakland was a black town in the middle of a Bay Area, which had a different spin on racism, more eugenically based. In other words, I'm smarter than you, and so therefore, I have enough money to spend these things, and I can give you these jobs, and as long as I'm on high and giving you stuff, everything is okay. You can say what you want to, you can have your culture and all this, but we're on top. All right? Just know your place. That's the Bay Area version of racism. Be free, but know your place. Okay. So, in that, all right, in that, the city grew. A's, Raiders, Warriors were in Oakland. We fashioned an easy way for people to get there. They didn't have to go through Oakland. White moneyed people. We didn't develop restaurants and shops and apartments and a neighborhood right there at the Coliseum in East Oakland for people to live in. We were and have been content with a flow through that says stop at the Coliseum to watch the A's, the Raiders, and the Warriors, and then get off and leave either by your car, through freeway, or BART. We didn't develop around it. And we're always content to have Black East Oakland just right next door, but not pay attention to its development and keep it quite literally almost, town and gown. All right. And so because of that, Oakland was always described as a hole in the donut. What does that mean? It means the donuts developed around Oakland. I did a study for the San Francisco Human Rights Commission when I worked for Noel Dea Polaris in 1991, and our client was none other than the now late, great Ed Lee. Ed Lee was then the chairman of the San Francisco Human Rights Commission. And I did the data for, and Noel Day wrote a study called African Americans in San Francisco from 1960 to 1990. And what I found that's directly relevant to my conversation with you here now is that when people migrated from one county to the other in San Francisco, it was just that in the Bay Area. You always the migration pattern was to the next adjacent place. So people in San Francisco migrate over to San Mateo more than they would migrate someplace else. Or if they were in another county, was another example. But what I discovered is that with African Americans people leaving San Francisco, say, to go east, they didn't go immediately to Alameda County. They leapfrogged Alameda County in Oakland and went to Walnut Creek and Contra Costa County. Why? They were leapfrogging over a predominantly Black Oakland. That's what was going on at the time. That's what my data showed, and it was a remarkable find that speaks to how race and money combine. So that answers your question, I believe. Okay, and that is why we've had these disinvestment problems. And that is why when Governor Brown came in, became mayor, there was this hope, and he made it clear he's going to get rid of the Black establishment and all that. All right. He played race. He played race. Jerry Brown made it okay for white people to spend their money in Oakland. But it came at the expense of those who were poor and Black, who couldn't afford this new elegant density Oakland. If we had maintained redevelopment, it would have been affordable. But Jerry said he didn't want that. He killed that deliberately. Jerry Brown is responsible for this 21st century Oakland. He has wrecked the Oakland culture that fights to have itself seen through emerging or recreating Soul Beat and everything else. So let me go on. Is your feed? Okay, that was you what happened there. Eric says, are any of these people running from here have any economic business background? Yeah, Ignacio worked for the city. He was city council president. He's the person that is responsible for the Coliseum Joint Powers Authority, among other things. Ignacio is a doer. You may not agree with what you perceive as politics to be, but there's never been a time when Ignacio was known for not getting anything done. Ignacio is a doer, and he attracts doers. I just got here, but the title of the stream doesn't sound very good. I'm sorry, Al. It's hard not to be a San Francisco suburb when you share the same media market. Well, Al, that's not true. Because, and I don't want to go into a whole discussion regarding how that could be changed, but where is it written by law or by birth that media has to be San Francisco focused to control? It doesn't have to be. Oakland could easily turn that around. That's another discussion. Zinni, who have you back for mayor? Ignacio de la Fuente? I agree with you, Zinni. Keep calling him out. Thank you, G-Deb. Hurts, though. Hurts, you know. That's the most recent comment. So it's 9:16. You've been on since what? Almost an hour? An hour. Yeah. If you have any other questions, please feel free to call or even text, but we're writing email here. I will I think email is better. Zenny62.com. There. Okay, use that one. All right. Use that one. As someone did the other night, to close, they asked me if I was corporatist. I will say this. Everybody, no, they asked me if I was globalist. Yeah. Everyone's globalist. You know why? You're online using email. You're online, you have a Facebook page. Your ability to reach across oceans in seconds is tremendous. So I don't care if you call yourself a non-globalist, you are by use of the technology. So forget all that stuff. It's ridiculous. All right. Anybody else have a comment before we close? I want to thank everybody for coming in. I really urge you to please do bookmark Oakland News Now blog.com and bookmark it, please. It's a news aggregator. We feed thousands of news items a day from the many different YouTube news channels, auto embed to produce exciting content, which you can comment on right there and then. And so Eric had a question. He says, Zinni, regardless who this turned out, the mayor going down losing 3-4. Yeah, that's true. That is true. And what bothers me is that, like Dan Kalb said it. He said when the Raiders, it was at the town hall that we had 2 days, that Saturday before the vote by the NFL on the future of the Raiders, which they eventually decided they were going to Las Vegas. Okay. But Dan Kalb said that the NFL may better decide because this isn't going to be there for long. I'm thinking, we don't have a plan to maintain sports. You didn't see that? Really? You never saw that video? Shame on you. You know why? Because I'm going to play it for you. Close out. And set it. Okay. And I'm gonna put it right. Found it. And right here. Share screen. There. Here's Dan Kalb. And here is the video, folks. This is from that town hall held the east side of the Coliseum, not the town hall with the NFL at Paramount, but here, listen.
Your press conference. Which of your press conference? She was great. great, wasn't she?
Yes,
yes, absolutely.
I think you've heard our message loud and clear. It is not a last-minute message. It's the message that Oakland and surrounding communities have been saying for months on end. We have a strong deal. We are one of the largest media markets in the country, and if the Raiders leave, actually go somewhere else, this entire Coliseum area will be developed and redeveloped, and there will never be an opportunity in the next 100 years to bring another team or the Raiders back.
Right.
If you
hear that? You hear that? He's your District 1 council member. Let's go continue.
say goodbye now and they actually leave, that means the Bay Area is a one-team market forever.
When we have enough room for two.
There would be no place to put the stadium after they leave. If we're going to redevelop this area with the stadium or without, we want to redevelop the Coliseum with a new football stadium. But if they leave, we'll do it without one, and it won't be a place to put one. Nowhere. Concord, Fremont, Berkeley, no one else is going to build a stadium. And they'll be saying that one of the largest media markets in the country can only hold one team, 49ers, and that's just ridiculous. They're shooting themselves in the foot financially. We are the place where the Raiders should be, financially, fan-wise, and because of our smart plan that we have that has multiple sources of funding to finance a new stadium and an ancillary development next to the stadium, brand new BART transfer situation. It's all coming together. We just need to make sure the owners understand.
And not only that, we're at a vibrant time in this community. You know, we talk about all the other negatives about it, but the positives are we've gotten over the institutional investor racism that's plagued us for decades, right? And now we're on the upswing. You know,
absolutely. I mean, Oakland's a growing place of investment, of diversity, of a huge, passionate fan base for the Raiders. We have Oakland and all of Northern California, but those people are not going to go to Las Vegas. They're not. I don't know where their fans are going to come from. You know, I mean,
they don't need it.
They don't need it. You know,
42% of the tourists still like they come from where and spend how much?
Yeah, it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense at all.
No.
So, there are a lot of unanswered questions for the Las Vegas deal.
Right.
And so I think it's going to fall apart. But I think the smart move would be for the NFL owners to tell Mark Davis, listen, Mark, you're not your father. We know what's best right now. You need to sit down with the City of Oakland, the Fortress Group, and Ronnie Lott, and work something out.
And there's something I want to do. And folks, there's something I want to do. This man is District 1 Councilman Dan Cal. He is representing his district excellently. So that's why I give him a personal shout out. Say thank you very much.
Thank you
for your service to the city.
A lot of good hard work.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Councilman. What do you think, man? What do you think?
I think this is a good gathering for Raider Nation. This ain't the whole Raider Nation ain't here, but y'all came together to show our support and love and our loyalty to the City of Oakland, not the City of Oakland, but Oakland Raiders in general. The votes come up in the next 3 days in Arizona, but like, if the people here, the owners are here to see this right now, they will have a strong, faith and heart as far as the Raiders belong right here in Oakland. Silver and black was born here in Oakland, born and raised in Oakland, but Hoodie says, and we're gonna stay here in Oakland too, to the end. But hey, what is it? Yes, sir.
Oh, man, yeah. What do you guys think, guys? What do you think? Nice job, first of all. What do you guys think? What do you think?
About this press conference?
Yeah,
or
everything, man. The press conference.
I think this is great. I wish we'd have started doing these already. That we didn't do it this weekend, but this was great. Like the whole community support together. That they showed that there's viability in this, and we'll see what happens on Monday.
Okay, so I'm glad I showed all that, and I want to stop there and come back because Eric said, Mika, let me get to Al's. Let me get to this in a second, Al, but let me say this, that I was wrong regarding Las Vegas because what I realized, and something we haven't been through ever before, but with the advent of digital media, it really took center stage. The advent of digital media dramatically increased the economic power of a singular NFL team, because now, more than ever, events, big events in particular, bring extreme value to where they are held. Why? Because now more than ever, more people can watch them. from anywhere in the world. So what does that do for NFL football? It gives the Raiders a fan base in Calcutta, in London, in Japan, not just in Houston or any other place. So you match that with this new home in Las Vegas, which is more geared toward tourism, and you get a large percentage of that $5.1 billion value the Raiders have. I completely blew it with that. I didn't see that as a factor, but I recognize that now, and I will never make that mistake. Having an NFL football organization in your town is now more powerful and more meaningful and more effective than ever, because it does what sports have always done. But again, because of digital media has been dramatically heightened. And think about the gambling aspect of this, okay? All right. It says that wherever I watch this, that Las Vegas is in the name. Las Vegas benefits from that exposure. So from a trends perspective, it goes up on high. It gets promoted. Oakland enjoyed that, but Oakland took it for granted. I didn't take that aspect for granted because when I was in charge of the Super Bowl, I reminded anyone that even back then, in the largely pre-internet, but not, we were just getting going, 90s, late 90s, we would enjoy $25 million in free advertising just by hosting the Super Bowl. Now, that's true for an NFL home game. All right? So all of these cities benefit from that. And that's why you have city after city after city now trying to get the NFL draft. What is Oakland doing? Nothing. Does Oakland have, to this day, the requisite number of hotel rooms to draw in tourists? No. Does it care? No. Does Oakland have a convention center near the size of Moscone Center in San Francisco to be competitive in the meetings, in incentives, convention, and entertainment industry, the MICE industry? The answer is no. All right? So if you want an example of how we're not primed to get sports, but need to change because there's a weak area we're in, it's in how little attention we pay to the MICE industry and its development. Quiz council members on this. They don't know. Quiz the mayor. She doesn't know. And it's not the first time. This has been true multi-generationally. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been in a position where the last convention center we were proud of was this 150,000 square foot dinky little thing in downtown Oakland. And yet we leave Henry J. Kaiser Convention Center to this day, not completed and not open. All right. We have not improved, and cities around us have, and in that key industry, and an industry that is, by its change and it's being impacted by digital media, has made pro sports and sports in general more powerful. Look at all those sports that have multiplied, everything from pie eating contests, women's bodybuilding, soccer, lacrosse. And now we have name, image, and likeness. What is all that tied to? But digital media. And at the center of all of this stands pro sports. And Oakland is trying to push itself out the door, and yet there are people who think that's okay, and they want to pass themselves off as being smarter than you and me. Okay. I want to say this. I love Dan Calb. Dan Calb is a great guy. But Dan was wrong about that message being put out there. I'm sure he'd love to have it back. So would I. But we were desperate to have the Raiders be here. We were upset at what was going on. I get why the Raiders did what they did. But Eric Grubman, then NFL senior vice president, executive vice president for business affairs, said that we were reacting to the Raiders. We were not acting on behalf of the Raiders. It's a big difference. But see, when Libby came back, she didn't do a lessons learned. And so her habit of making herself the face of the Raiders retention project poured right over into where we are today. She made herself the face of Howard Terminal. She didn't learn a thing. All right. See, I'm sorry, but I think, do you think Ken Ignacio, if he wins, will work hard to keep the A's in Oakland? Yes. If there's anybody that can pull a rabbit out of their hat, it's Ignacio. The question is a matter of timing. I personally believe it will be too late. I personally believe it will be too late. The focus has to be on getting new teams, new owners in. We claim to have all these people around the Bay Area with all this money. Why not, right? Thank you, Harley. I appreciate you. If the A's do move, sadly do move, do you think they'll demolish the Tropicana Casino or buy? I think it's going to be the Fairgrounds, Al. That's owned by Phil Ruffin. I think it has some caliche problems at the bottom, but look, not the first time. It's easy to get around. In that area, if you think about it, where it's located, you have the exciting rehabilitation of the Fontainebleau Hotel, 70-story monstrosity that sits beautifully in North Las Vegas Strip. We got Resorts World over there. That's the next big place, the next big thing, that development over there, that whole region. Okay. I think I answered this. I responded to that. And he says, if this new stadium doesn't go well, I see them going elsewhere as next year in the final year on the lease, and they will not extend it, nor will MLB allow it. Hector, that's an interesting take that I haven't explored, and I'll get into that more. I'm glad you brought that up. All right, folks, there it is. Thank you for your questions. And again, subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark OaklandNewsNowBlog.com. And hey, subscribe to our newsletter. We have it. And that will end this broadcast. Thank you.